Hey everybody, and welcome back to Ready Steady Play. I'm here with a prototype of Shadow Tactics. And if you found this video, you probably found it through their Kickstarter campaign. What I'm going to do in this video is give you an overview of the rules for this prototype version of Shadow Tactics. This will allow you to get a sense of what happens in the game and what you can sort of expect from the game that you could potentially be backing on Kickstarter. And this video will also allow you to follow along with the playthrough that will be airing on Ready Steady Play. Shadow Tactics is set at the beginning of the 17th century, the start of the Edo period, I think. My history is not very good, unfortunately. Ollie is our historian. But it's the unification of Japan after the provinces have stopped warring, where each province was ruled by a daimyo. So the new emperor of Japan is dealing with an uprising of people who want to go back to the old ways of warring, and they want to rule themselves, and they don't want to answer to the new emperor. So he's dispatched his ninjas to take care of these rebels. And the ninjas have to complete various stealth missions, such as infiltrating a castle, securing goods, things like that. And if the ninjas are successful, then the emperor will bring peace to the land, and if they fail, then the uprising will win, and Japan will once again fall into war. It's a one versus many game, which means that a group of players will take on one other player, and the group will be the ninjas, and the other player will be the daimyo, controlling all of the guards and trying to prevent the ninjas from accomplishing their goal. It's scenario-based, which means that you'll be playing different scenarios that you'll set up at the beginning, but there's also a through campaign. The prototype alone we have here has an entire chapter of this campaign in it, which offers plenty of missions and scenarios to play through, as well as an ongoing campaign tracker that will modify resources given to both the ninjas and the daimyo based on their success. But you can also just play a sort of skirmish mode, which will allow you to get stuck into the game. But if you like that campaign kind of stuff, you can invest resources and you can level up your ninjas as well. You get these side missions that allow you to unlock more cards. You can purchase consumables to use on the missions. But what we're really interested here is the nitty-gritty and the mechanics. How does the game play? Should we back it? Well, let me show you. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to bother with a full rundown of the components like I normally do, because this is very prototype. There's some standees in here. They're all going to be miniatures. There's some alert tokens that take the form of paper clips. But what I will do is I will give you a rundown of how the ninjas' actions work and how they play. I'll talk about the guards and how they interact with the ninjas. And then at the end, I might give you a brief overview of the campaign mode as well. But just enough to wet your whistle and see if this is something that you're interested in playing, and so that you can follow along with our playthrough on Ready Steady Play. As a game, Shadow Tactics is heavily thematic. It really wants you to get a sense of being a ninja, sneaking around, trying to collaborate with your fellow ninjas at a time when there were no earpieces or radios or man on a computer back at base. Everything is done by stealthing around the board and trying your best to collaborate to perform the most efficient stealth takedowns. As such, some of the rules in isolation can seem quite abstract. So I'm going to lay these rules out for you that take you on a bit of a journey through the story of Shadow Tactics. As usual, all of the sections will be laid out below, so if there's something specific you're looking for, I hope you can find it in the section headings down there. But you're not going to be referencing this rules video later, it's just to learn how the Kickstarter's played, so let's take you on a journey through Shadow Tactics. So we've set up the first mission of Shadow Tactics here, Chapter 1, Mission 1, in which the evil daimyo Yabu is working against the Emperor, and the ninjas have to stealth into Osaka Castle, which is one of his strongholds. The ninjas are going to try and steal some gunpowder here on the board and take it to the gates of the castle and blow it up. The daimyo has to stop them, and the only way the daimyo can stop them is by throwing legions of guards at them. Now, the thing is, ninjas are impossible to kill because they're super awesome and they just murder everything like murder machines. The problem is that at some point they're going to run out of time and it's going to be too late. Maybe the sun comes up. If the ninjas get the gunpowder to the entrance of the castle and blow it up, they win. And if the daimyo delays them for 12 turns, then they lose. And the daimyo can only throw waves and waves of useless minions at them, hoping to delay them and slow them down. And this is a 3-player game I've set up here. in the 3-player game, 1 player is the Daimyo, and 2 players are each controlling 2 ninjas. So we've got Orange Ninja, Purple Ninja, Yellow Ninja, and Blue Ninja, who I believe are called Mugen, Yuki, Hayato, and I forgot the 4th one. The game takes place in a turn, and a turn is divided up into a number of phases. You've got 2 action phases, and then a movement phase, and then a sort of cleanup phase at the end. In each action phase, the ninjas are going to program actions to carry out on the board. And once the actions are programmed, they'll be taken from the ninja's action deck and put face down on this mat. And those are locked in. After all of the ninjas have locked in their actions for a single action phase, the Daimyo will have an opportunity to try and thwart their plans by playing some Daimyo cards. Then, once the Daimyo cards are played, and the Daimyo's taken their best guess at what they think the ninjas are going to do, the ninja cards are all revealed and the actions are carried out in sequence. Then, that takes place again, with the ninjas locking in another set of actions and the Daimyo playing the rest of their Daimyo cards. After both action sequences have taken place, then there's a movement phase. And a movement phase works very similarly, only now the ninjas are going to lock in movement cards on this mat. Then the Daimyo is going to try and guess where the ninjas are moving and hopefully move some guards around the board to try and catch them or spot them moving around. If they're spotted, they get into trouble and they lose turns, thus hastening the Daimyo's ultimate objective of running out the clock. So once the Daimyo's moved their guards around, the ninjas will carry out their programmed movement, and once that's done, there'll be a cleanup phase, and then it'll all start again from the top. Now, as you can see here, we've got some wonderful little ninjas, and we've got some really terrible guardsmen. These guys are going to get murdered. Now, these are all going to be plastic miniatures in the Kickstarter. First, I want to explain a little bit about this board. This board is being constructed according to the scenario setup. Antler Games are saying they're changing up some of the art, but what's important to understand is there are 3 types of spaces on this board. There are these yards, which are the brown empty spaces. There are junctions, which are all these colored buildings and colored spaces. And then there are bushes, and bushes are all of the orange spaces that contain these bushes here. And guards move around in yards. Ninjas move around in bushes. You'll never have a ninja stopping on a junction, and you'll never have a guard stopping on a junction. Ninjas move across junctions, and guards move between yards. What's important to note is that guards also have this arc of visibility, and this is the direction in which they're looking. This is really important because the very fundamental elements of the game are that the ninjas are moving between bushes, trying to avoid the guards' viewpoint. If the guards are looking at the ninjas, they are limited in what they can do. But if the guards are not looking at the ninjas, then the ninjas are able to move around freely. Now, if the guards are not paying attention at all, then this mission would be very easy for the ninja to go and grab the gunpowder and take it over here to the objective. But if the guards are standing around in the yards, watching what's going on, and catches the ninja moving across junctions, then the guards are going to become alerted. And what we've got is this fancy alert token to note when the guard becomes alerted. And when guards are alerted, ninjas start to lose health points, which slows them down, and they start to lose turns, which is really bad, because when they get to 0 turns, that's when the game ends for the ninjas. If that all seemed a little overwhelming, don't worry. We're going to go into it in a bit more detail now. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at how the Daimyo is going to set up these ninjas on the board. And during this part of the explanation, I'm also going to explain how guards have facing and how they view different spaces on the board. I'm going to talk in brief about how ninjas move around the board as well, but we'll get into much more detail on how that actually functions later on when we get to these cards and what all these cards mean. But what's important to understand is that ninjas are trying to move around without being spotted, and, if they can, trying to kill guards without being spotted too. The best way for the Daimyo to catch the ninjas is to have guards watching the junctions when ninjas move through them. This is also going to limit where the ninjas can move, because if they're spotted, it's bad news. Guards without alert symbols are called calm, and guards with alert symbols are called alerted. Now, the Daimyo wants to have as many alerted guards as possible, because alerted guards do more damage and they can be moved around more easily. They're looking out for ninjas, they're keeping an eye out for them, they'll run around the board trying to find them. Calm guards are basically useless and will just stand there, picking their nose and being useless. This means we're going to have to try and spot the ninjas and get them in our field of view. So a guard in a yard has essentially 2 different facings. This facing here is called facing into the yard. When this guard is looking in the yard, they can see everything in the yard. So if a ninja comes into the yard for whatever reason, the ninja will be spotted. This guard is facing out of the yard. This guard is looking at this junction here, and they're also looking into these bushes. Now, this is an important distinction because if a guard can see the junction here, then any ninja passing between these two bushes will be spotted. If the guard can see into these bushes, then any ninja exiting these bushes will be spotted as well. Sometimes ninjas will come into the yard in order to kill guards or to sneak around. They can cross yards as well in the action phase. So they might be spotted that way. So as the daimyo, when you're setting up your guard, you're going to be thinking very carefully about whether or not you want them facing into the yard or facing out of the yard at junctions and at the bushes. If they're facing the wrong way and a ninja is in the bushes behind them, then it's curtains for the guard because it's a lot easier for the ninja to take them out without alerting them or alerting other guards. You might have two guards set up like this, watching a junction and watching each other's back, and then the ninjas avoid it completely. Guards don't actually do anything. They just look. They just look around and look at stuff. And if they happen to spot a ninja, great, then they become alerted, and then, they might wound the ninja, but you don't need to play a card for that. If an alerted guard catches a ninja in certain situations, they will just wound the ninja. A calm guard will never really do anything useful, so you need the guard to become alerted first. However, as guards are alerted, then they become more dangerous, and they can move around the board more freely. Furthermore, as guards become alerted, or alerted guards view ninjas, they'll create these noise tokens. And the more noise tokens you get, the more daimyo cards you can play. The daimyo has a deck of cards here that he can play. And these cards allow him to move the guardsmen around the board, change their facing, and importantly, summon more guards. But we'll go through this deck in more detail in a minute. First, let's set out the guards on the board as though the daimyo has just deployed them. You have to put one guard in each yard at the start of the game. And what this means is that each one of them is particularly vulnerable. Because a solo guard in a yard by himself is pretty easy for the ninjas to pick off. So at the beginning of the game, you can have 1 or 2 guards per yard. Once all the guards have been deployed, then the ninjas are deployed. And they've got these 3 starting locations on the board with the arrows on them. The starting locations have been pre-set up as per the rules of the scenario. And you can start 2 ninjas in any given starting location. So we'll say that our ninjas are going to deploy like this. Now remember, the ninjas are trying to get to the gunpowder and bring it to the objective over here. This is a barracks, and this is where any new guardsmen that spawn on the map will spawn. The number of rounds the ninjas have to complete this mission is set on this dial, and at the moment it's set to 12. However, they can quite easily lose 2, 3, or 4 turns in a given round if they're not careful, because losing turns is one of the penalties for being careless. At the beginning of the game, the daimyo will also shuffle their daimyo deck and draw cards equal to the number of ninjas on the board, in this case 4. Each ninja character and the daimyo player themselves has a series of side objectives. At the beginning of the game, you'll pick one of these to use for this mission, and this is an extra objective that you can have, and if you complete it, you'll unlock a reward depicted below, which will be available for use in all future games. So this is part of the campaign mode. As you can see here for the ninjas, this includes additional hit points, action cards, and jutsu tokens. More on those later. So now that we've got our board all set up, we're really ready to begin with the first action phase. So each ninja has 2 decks of cards, as well as hit points and some ninja tokens. So let's have a look how that works. So here we've got the ninja Yuki. These 3 cards represent Yuki's hit points. And when Yuki loses all of her hit points, then she can't do anything. She can't be killed, and there's no player elimination in the game, but if you lose all your hit points, it slows you down considerably, and remember, this is a race against the clock. She's got her quests here. At the beginning of this mission, she'll pick one of her quests to keep, and the other 2 she'll set aside to complete in subsequent missions. She's got this deck of movement cards here, which looks like that on the back, and we've got a deck of action cards here, which looks like that. Each of these decks is completely unique to the given ninja, so there is flavor as each of the ninjas have different abilities and capabilities. So in the action phase, we're going to pick up this deck of cards here and have a look through. Now, as you can see here, Yuki's got 3 different colors of cards: green, red, and white. If we take a look at Aiko's deck here, we can see that it's very different. It contains less green cards and some blue cards. There are 3 kinds of action cards in the decks, discounting the white card. The white card is a special quest card and has different purposes depending on the scenario. Every ninja has a quest card because they'll all need to take part in the mission. But the primary kinds of action cards we're looking at here are these 3 colors: green, red, and blue. A green card is hidden. These are actions that the ninja can do pretty much without worry. For example, wait is a green action because if they take this action, they'll hide in the bushes and there's no risk of them alerting the guards. Similarly, we've got a heal card in here. Again, they can heal themselves while hiding in the bushes without alerting guards. Finally, Aiko's got this special ability which allows her to distract guards, but we'll look at that a bit later. Green cards that allow you to take actions against the guards are very, very powerful. Next up, we've got these blue cards. These are stealthy cards. These are cards that allow ninjas to take actions that are less obvious and less likely to be spotted. Then we've got these red cards. These are direct actions. Any direct actions taken are very easily spotted by guards, and so you must be very careful about their use. Let's have a look at how these might play out on the board in an example. So during this phase, Aiko is going to pick one of these cards to play. Now in this case, we've got a yard here with a guard facing inwards, so he's watching the whole yard. However, no one's watching this guard's back. This means that Aiko can pretty much play any one of these cards without fear, because this guy is all by himself and relatively easy to take out. At this stage in the game, the guards are very vulnerable because they're mostly by themselves. So, for example, let's take a look at this card here. This is some kind of poisoned hairpin attack, and it's got these 2 symbols at the top. This is a light attack, and this light attack murders spearmen like these. This also has the trespass icon, which allows ninjas to move across yards between bushes. So, if we were to play this card here, we would have to select a target for the light attack, so we'd pick this guard. We would then take this card and put it on the programming board face down. We would put one of Aiko's tokens on it, and this would come out to play later. However, let's look at what happens if it were to be activated right now. Aiko would move into the yard and select the target of her light attack, which would be this guard here. Now, he is mesmerized by her charms and overcome and can't do anything, so he's murdered and replaced with a corpse. Now, the trespass comes into effect, and this allows her to move into one of the bushes adjacent to this yard. That can be this bush, or this bush. Note that if she enters this bush from this yard, this guard does not see her because he's looking at the other side of the bush. He's looking at the side of the bush next to this yard here, so he can't see her when she moves into the bush at the back from this yard here. This is a very important distinction, and it's a little tricky to get your head around. But you just got to remember that guards can't see through bushes, but they can see junctions. But more on junctions when we get to the movement phase. Now, because this is a blue card, this means that it will trick the target of the action. So in the example here, where Aiko steps out here, this guard will see her coming, but because she's beguiling, which is represented by the fact that this is a blue card, then the guard is seduced by her and doesn't react quick enough, and then has his head chopped off and is killed. Yuki has a similar attack, but it's red. And if Yuki were to do this attack here on this guard, he would see her coming because it is a red direct action, which means that she's not beguiling like Aiko and her blue attack card. And if the guard spots the red card, he will become alerted and Yuki will be wounded and the red card will be cancelled as well. So she'll be forced to stay in the bushes where she started. The guard will become alerted because he's like, hey, who was that? What was going on? And a noise token will be given to the Daimyo player as well. If this guard had been facing away from Yuki and not watching her, then she could definitely have played this red card and totally murdered him. In which case she would have stepped out into the yard and he wouldn't have seen her because his back is turned. See, he's facing here onto the junction and the bush here. and then he would have been stabbed in the back and killed. Where this becomes more complicated is if there's two guards. Now, in this case, the guard is facing into the yard, so we know that the red card would fail. However, the blue card can still be used because the guard here has his back turned. So, Aiko can step into the yard, use the blue card to beguile this man here. He's the target of the attack, therefore he is tricked. This one isn't looking, he's looking the wrong way. So she still kills this man, leaving behind a corpse. Where things get more difficult for Aiko is in a situation like this, where she's in the bushes here, there's a guard watching the bushes and watching the yard. If she tries to play the blue card here, she has to pick a target. However, the other guard will become a witness. If she targets this yard, she'll be forced to step out of these bushes. This guard is looking at that side of the bushes, and this guard is looking into the target yard, which means both guards will essentially see her coming out of the bushes here in order to attack one of them, and the guard will step in to prevent that from happening. Both guards will become alerted, and two noise will come out. The blue card will also be cancelled. Mugen, however, is a total death machine, and he can play a card like this. Now, this card has this ×2 on it, which means that he can pick two targets. So in this case, he's going to pick both the guards in this yard. Now, even though they're both looking at him when he steps into this yard to murder them, because they're both targets, neither of them is a witness, which means he can kill them both, leaving behind two corpses. And this little bell symbol means that makes noise. This is effectively him ducking out of the trees or jumping out of a bush and murdering someone and maybe throwing a shuriken at another, or he lops both their heads off with one running attack. But as he murders one, the other begins to cry out and then is quickly silenced, which is what this noise token represents. It's also worth noting that this doesn't have a trespass on it, so he doesn't actually get to move. He returns to the bush he started in. Mugen also has a card like this. This is a hidden card, and this shows the spearman symbol, which means it can only be used on a spearman, and this symbol here, which means it stuns them. Stun has two effects. The first effect is that if a guard is alerted, it just removes the alert token. So it returns an alert guard to a calm guard, which is fine. The other effect of stun is that it will put out one of these stun markers on the guards, and now the guard is effectively ignored this round. They have no view, they have no line of sight, they can't do anything this round. They are essentially non-existent. The stun marker will go away at the end of the round. But what's good about this card is it's green, which means that if Mugen is in the bushes here and uses it, even if another guard is looking into the yard here, so both guards are looking into the yard, Mugen can use this card to stun one of these two guards without any fear of repercussion because it's a green hidden card, which means essentially what he's doing is taking this bottle of sake, he's rolling it out of the bushes and into the yard, this guard's picking it up and getting drunk, and now he doesn't really care about anything else. So the green card cannot be spotted. So our stunned guard has woken up for a minute, and Mugen has played this card. Now, the first symbol means that this costs a jutsu token. Every ninja begins the game with 1, you can get more later to upgrade, but they also replenish at the beginning of every mission. So then he does a light attack and creates a noise token. So if he were to do this in this yard, this is a green card, which means he's not spotted, but if he kills this man, then that man is replaced by a corpse, and this guard will immediately spot the corpse because he's looking into the yard. So even though the green hidden cards cannot put the ninja in any danger, the consequences of the actions on the cards may still have repercussions, like for example spotting a corpse. But if we return to our sake example here, we've now got this one guard who's stunned and this other guard who's still facing into the yard. But what can happen now is Mugen's ally here, Aiko, can play her blue card here, which allows her to murder someone and trespass. And if she picks this guard here, then she can freely come in here and murder him. This guy can't witness anything because he's drunk. And then she can trespass off over here. They just need to remember to make sure that they take care of the corpse before this guy sobers up. When Aiko picks a target for this card, she better make sure that she picks the guy who's paying attention and not the guy who's drunk. Because if she moves out to kill this guy's going to notice it for sure and do something about it. So if you're paying attention, you're probably thinking the ninjas are very, very powerful. But there's a catch. Now I'll tell you what that catch is. But first, let's go back to the beginning of our action round here. each ninja has to program one of their action cards. Now, when they do this, they don't show the card to the Daimyo. So they go into their selection here, and they pick one of their cards in secret and put it down on the board here. They put down one of their ninja tokens to indicate who the owner of the card is. And each ninja does this. Now remember, we're playing a 3-player game here, so 2 of these ninjas are each controlled by the same player. So now that the programming has taken place, here's the catch. This programming, which is all done in secret, if the Daimyo knows what these cards are, and he or she has the cards available in their hand here to do something about it, then the ninjas are in trouble. Here's the situation. You might think that they could show each other their cards, or they could whisper and concoct a plan, but the fact is that the ninjas are so powerful that if they were to have perfect planning information, they would no doubt sweep the board. But they don't have radios, they don't have headsets, and if they whisper too loudly, the guards will of course find them in the bushes. So the ninja players are not allowed to say anything to one another in secret. They're not allowed to show each other any cards without also showing those cards to the Daimyo. And they cannot make any secret hand gestures. And that's what makes this programming so incredibly difficult. Because the order in which the cards go out is potentially very important. Which cards go out, potentially very important as well. If a ninja has to take an action that they could legitimately take on one of these cards, they must do it so that they can't forfeit something that they've put out. They must carry it out if they're able to. And that leads to some very tricky situations where ninjas are running into guards and behaving in a way that's just a bit of a screw up. And the Daimyo knows this. The Daimyo is listening to all of the cagey plans the ninjas are doing. They need to try and plan as best they can, or else they're just going to be playing cards and hoping they get it right, which is okay at the start when there's not a lot of guards. But as the guards move around, as the Daimyo summons more of them, as more of them become alert, this becomes more and more important, this collaboration. But, of course, the Daimyo is listening to it all, and if the Daimyo knows what your plan is in the action phase, then they're very likely going to be able to stop it. The Daimyo will play 2 of the cards from the hand of 4 they drew at the beginning of the round. The Daimyo always plays half of the cards in their hand during the action phase, and then the other half during the second action phase. Daimyo cards can be played on the Daimyo's turn in the action phase, after the ninjas have programmed their cards, and before the cards are revealed and carried out. Daimyo cards have 2 sides. They have a blue side and a white side, and the blue phase side will happen immediately. The white end is usually more powerful. However, the white side will be put down in an exhausted position and will not become available until later, when it will become unexhausted and the Daimyo can call upon it during any of these steps to play it in addition to any cards that the Daimyo played for the blue effect that phase. So, in this example here, we've got 1 movement. And now this is called a basic movement, and it allows a spearman to move anywhere within a yard and change their facing. So, in this case, we could take this guy, and we could move him around like that, or we could move him to another corner of the yard. We could change his facing and move him over here. It's important to note that guardsmen can never be in corners adjacent to one another, and you can see that the models don't really fit, but guardsmen must be 1 corner apart. What they can't do is move between yards with this action. So this move action here only allows them to move around the yard they're in. This is called a charge move, and this allows the guardsmen to move between yards, as well as changing their corner or changing their facing. This is called spread panic, and if a guard is alerted, you can play this card to give an alert condition to one other guard in that yard. Finally, this card here summons another spearman at the barracks. So this is the barracks here. So we take a spearman from the pool off the board and just put them down in the barracks. Now, you may have noticed I've got a couple of guys out here who aren't spearmen. They've got a little flag on their heads. These are the officers. They're exactly the same as spearmen with one exception, that they always count as having charge moves. So even if you play a regular move card on them, it counts as a charge move. So they can move freely between yards most of the time. Additionally, any guardsman, spearman in the yard with the officer also counts as having a charge move if they play a move. The officer can order the guardsman around the yard into the next yard, so on. But once the guardsman moves to the next yard, they lose the officer's ability unless he moves with them. So now that our ninjas have got their actions laid in, the daimyo has the opportunity to play some cards. So they might play this one face up and move this man in here. Remember, he can use this as a charge action. And then maybe they play this one sideways so that they can use it later to summon some more guards. These two are retained for later. Then we flip over our cards here to find out what's going on. So we start with Mugen, who's going to stun this guard. Note that for this action, Mugen picks an adjacent yard to target and then picks a target within that yard. In this case, there's only one adjacent yard, which is this one. And so we leave that there. And then it's Aiko's turn. And she's going to murder this guard. So she's going to step into here. She's going to murder this man. They're taken off the board and replaced with a corpse. And because she's trespassing, she then moves into a bush adjacent to the yard. Now, this guard's looking into that yard anyway, so he doesn't spot her. But even if he were looking outwards, he still wouldn't spot her coming into this side of the bushes. And then it's Yuki here. And Yuki's going to trespass into this yard. However, this guard has spotted her leaving the bushes because it's a red action, so it's failed. This guard becomes alerted. He's like, "Hey, a ninja, stop." She has to remain in the bushes where she started, and the daimyo gets a noise token. And this has really screwed up Hayata's plans as well, because he's picked basically the same thing. He's going to trespass here into the yard, where this guard, who is now alerted, is like, "Hey, stop." And this is worse, because the guard can't become alerted anymore. So what happens is another noise is created, and Hayato is shot with a crossbow or something, or jabbed with the spear, and he loses a hit point. Then he has to remain in the bushes because the action is cancelled. So a much better first turn for Mugen and Aiko than for Yuki and Hayato. And then the second action phase begins, and this is carried out exactly the same way in the first action phase, with the exception that these cards are not recovered until the beginning of the movement phase, which means that these cards cannot be played again. The ninjas are going to have to look for other cards. The daimyo will probably be looking for a way to put one of his guardsmen here into this yard in order to discover this corpse and become alert. It's also good that they've got this alert guard up here now that they can use to move around, but they'll have to be careful because Hayato and Yuki will probably be looking for cards in their deck to kill that guard. If they'd been a bit more communicative, they might have figured out a way to kill that guard without causing a mess. So our ninjas have set up their second set of actions. Hayato starts because he's in the first position. Now, the ninja players may well have discussed who should go first, but they can't discuss it too much, otherwise they risk giving away too much information to the daimyo. Hayato has played this card here, which is a distraction card. So this means it can only be used against spearmen, and this means that Hayato can change the spearman's position and facing in the yard. So in this case, he just picks up the alert guard here and turns him to look away. I guess he's hoping that Yuki's played some kind of aggressive card in order to kill. So that concludes 2 rounds of the action phase, and these cards are collected by the appropriate ninjas. And we move into the movement phase. Now, in the movement phase, the ninjas can program up to 2 movement cards. And in this phase, they're going to be moving along those junctions we looked at earlier. So this is Aiko's movement deck. Now, Aiko's here in these bushes, and these are her movement cards. So as you can see, they all correspond to different junctions. These black cards correspond to these black buildings here. These pink cards correspond to the pink spaces here and here. The green cards correspond to the green spaces like this one. These yellow cards correspond to the yellow spaces like this one. These white cards correspond to the white spaces like this one here and this one here. It's worth noting that Aiko doesn't have a brown card for this space here. Some of the ninjas do. For example, Yuki has one there, and some don't. Some cards also allow you to redirect your ninja at the last minute if you don't like what's going on. However, some do not, and some lock you into a specific direction. So don't forget to take into account which way you want the ninja to go. when you place the card down, because it's very easy to send them off into the wrong bushes if you're not paying attention. In this phase, the ninjas are going to program up to 2 movement cards each. Now, they can program 0 to 2, but if a ninja programs 0 movement cards, it's quite obvious to the Daimyo that they are not moving. So they are also allowed to program 1 or 2 illegal moves and still move no spaces. The challenge of programming illegal moves is you need to make sure you're paying attention and you don't accidentally program a move you can do, because then you must do it. The other thing is that you might confuse your cohorts by programming in cards that don't involve any actual movement. In the action phase, Hayato took a wound from the guard that spotted him. The wounds in this game prevent ninjas from doing certain things. So the first wound card prevents them from playing a second movement card in the movement phase. So we've got a little X here. The next wound will stop them from playing red action cards in the action phase, and if they lose all 3 wounds, they can't move at all, and they can't play blue cards in the action phase either, which means they're pretty much limited to playing only green cards. Fortunately, all ninjas have a green heal card, but this does slow them down and make them very easy for the guards to catch. So our ninjas have programmed in their movement. Now you'll notice that Yuki and Aiko have each programmed in 2 cards, and Mugen and Hayato have only programmed 1 card each, and that's because they've both taken a wound, so they're only allowed 1 card each. It's also worth noting that in the movement phase, when we're carrying out movement of the ninjas, we're basically going to ignore bushes for the time being. Like, as the ninjas move around, we're really just paying attention to the junctions, and specifically the junctions that are being watched by guards. In the movement phase, the order of the cards being revealed is changed. In the action phase, we go linearly across the top and then linearly across the bottom. However, in the movement phase, we go from here, down to here, back up to here, down to here, and we zigzag across the chart for reasons that I can't explain. Perhaps this is just a quirk of the prototype, or perhaps this is designed deliberately to confuse the ninjas with their already limited communication abilities. So let's have a look at Aiko's first card. Down here on the southern side of the board, Aiko and Mugen are laughing because pretty much none of these junctions are being watched. The only junction being watched is this yellow one, being watched by this guard here. These 2 guards are both facing into the yards, so they're not spotting any junctions at all, which gives these ninjas quite a lot of options for movement. Hayato and Yuki have worse options because this guard here is watching this black junction. That means that if they move through this junction, they're going to find themselves in trouble. This guard here is also watching this green junction, which is also bad news for our 2 troops here. Remember, they're trying to get over here to the gunpowder, so they need to figure out a way to do that. So our first movement card here belongs to Aiko, and it shows a movement through the black area. So she's just going to move through this black junction here to this bush up here. And that's not being watched by any guards, so she is A-okay. So the next card to play is also Aiko's. And here we've got a white card. So in this case, there's no white junction. She's got a brown one, a yellow one, and a black one. So she'll just stay put and do nothing. So now that the ninjas have locked in their movement, before any of the movement actually takes place, the very first thing that happens is the Daimyo can move any of the alerted guards. And this move is not limited to the yard. So this is the only alerted guard on the board at the moment, but the Daimyo could move him to this yard, or this yard, or this yard, and change his facing and position as well. And the Daimyo could do this for every single alerted guard. This is called the pursuit step, and it represents the guards who are alerted actually searching for the ninjas. So in this case, the Daimyo can see that this ninja is already watching this junction here, so it stands to reason that he'd put this guard over here to watch this junction here. This puts Hayato and Yuki in a really bad position because both junctions are being watched. Next turn, they might be able to trespass through this yard, and the Daimyo should think about how he's essentially turning his back on the ninjas for next turn, but maybe he'll have a card in his hand that he can use to right that guard at that time. And maybe this is a gamble that she's willing to take in order to catch the ninjas flat-footed if they've made poor choices. So now we find out whether or not Yuki's going to be caught off guard, and it's bad news for Yuki because she's gone through that yellow junction. So Yuki here has moved through a junction and she's been spotted by an alert guard. Now, if the guard were not alerted, he would become alerted and would create a noise token. However, because he's already alerted, Yuki loses a health point. However, she does get to continue on to her destination. Now that all the movement cards have been revealed and resolved, we have what's called the search step. In the search step, any alerted guards who are facing bushes will search the bushes. We only have 2 alert guards here and here, but this one is looking into these bushes here in which Yuki is hiding. So the alert guard does a search and discovers Yuki. This generates a noise, and more importantly, a turn is lost. This search capture is the best way for the Daimyo to cost the ninjas time, because the ninjas lose entire turns. For each ninja that's found in this way, they will lose a turn. So they could, if all 4 ninjas are found in a single search phase, lose 4 turns in a single movement phase. Fortunately for our ninjas in this case, it was just 1 ninja, so they've gotten away with it okay. And the ninjas pick up their movement cards, collecting them back, and that resolves the movement step. Then we move on to the refresh phase, and the very first thing that happens in the refresh phase is the turn timer ticks down by 1. So they've gone from 12 to 10 because of Yuki who got caught. The next thing that happens is any guards who are stunned lose their stun status. Next up, we remove noise counters equal to the number of ninjas on the board minus 1. So in this case, we're going to get rid of 3 noise counters, which leaves 4. And now we check to see whether the noise threshold has been reached. So in this case, there are 4 noise tokens. There are 4 ninjas on the board. So the noise threshold is triggered. If the noise is equal to or greater than the number of ninjas, this happens. In this case, the noise is paired off in sets of 2, and for each set of 2, the Daimyo draws a Daimyo card. Now remember, at the beginning of their phase, they're also going to draw cards equal to the number of ninjas. So the Daimyo will get 4 more cards, giving them 6 to play this round. However, the noise is then spent and returned to the bowl, and it's reset to 0. If there had been an odd number, if there had been 5 noise tokens, the odd one would be left over. But the Daimyo must spend all of the noise tokens possible. So for every set of 2, they must trade in those 2 for a card. And remember, in the Daimyo action phase, they will have to play half these cards. So a hand of 6 means 3 and 3. Next, you take any of those cards that were set aside earlier and refresh them. These actions are now available to the Daimyo to use during the action phase and can be traded in on any one of their subsequent turns. So that's pretty much a rundown of a turn in Shadow Tactics. I feel like this was the best way to explain the rules. There's a lot of action cards available to the ninjas, and I'm not going to go into what every single action card they have does, but they are very flavorful and each one of them works very differently, and so you get some cool insight into how the different characters are. There's another ninja in the box, so I don't see any reason why you couldn't play with up to 6 players, but the very core of this game is the limited communication, so that would make it quite difficult for the ninjas, I think. In a scenario like this where each player controls a couple of ninjas, this is going to make life easier for the ninjas, because ninjas work best in pairs or in threes. A ninja by themselves tends to get murdered. So having 2 that you control minimizes to an extent the amount of communication you have to do with your collaborators, with the other ninjas. And so in that way, you can circumvent some of the communications issues, but they really do form the core of this game. But I do think that the communication limitation is a very, very interesting twist on this hidden programming mechanic, and I'm very excited to see how it plays out. So I'm going to be coming back tomorrow with Michael and Ollie, and we're going to be playing through a game of Shadow Tactics, a full game of Shadow Tactics. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to talk just a little bit about the campaign mode. There isn't really a lot in the prototype to show off the campaign mode, but I'll just talk you through some of the facts. So if you're interested in hearing about those, stick around. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this. I hope it's given you good insight into how this works and what to expect from it. But like I said, if you want to get a real flavor for these communications issues, please do come back tomorrow and join us for our playthrough. Thanks very much for watching. So Chapter 1 of the Shadow Tactics campaign has 5 missions. And these 5 missions are essentially 5 scenarios of the game that you'll play. 5 different maps, 5 different setups, all of that kind of goodness. And the ninjas can pick any of the 5 missions to go on at any given time. But you might want to avoid the last mission because it's really, really hard. And if you don't do some of the other missions first, the Daimyo will start off really strong. You see, every time you take on a mission, which is essentially a location, what you're doing is removing it from the Daimyo. So every time you take one mission on, the Daimyo is going to collect tax from all the locations they own. And the tax are these coins. And the tax are these coins here. The Daimyo can use these to buy cards that allow them to put out more soldiers, to buy consumables that give their soldiers bonuses, and all kinds of other goodness. Now, when the Daimyo takes the wealth is going to be placed on the cards that are bought and put down in different locations. And when they go to the location, you take the coins from the cards that are present in the location and put them down on the junctions on the board. And as the ninjas move around the board, they can pick up these coins, which they can then use to buy upgrades and consumables and things like that. So you have here an example of action cards. These are consumables the ninjas can buy. There's a money cost down here. And as you can see, you've got all kinds of cool different special abilities and things that you can purchase with the ninjas. There's an extra movement card, extra wound. That's with 2 extra turns. That's really cool. And the Daimyo can also purchase extra cards. Here, these are extra cards that go into their deck. This one allows them to summon the samurais. The samurais are another kind of guard. They work the same way as the spearmen, but they're harder to kill because they're heavily armored, which means that they take 2 attacks to kill instead of 1, unless you have a special heavy attack. But only Mugen gets it, and he only gets it when he levels up. You see, when Mugen achieves this side quest in one of his missions, he gets this extra attack, this extra action card here, which has a heavy attack on it. And this, in order to complete this mission, he has to kill 3 officers in one mission. So then you've got, these are just extra deployments, so you can start with an extra officer. This allows you to start by upgrading one of the yards into a tower. And the tower will go down and replace the yard, and it will allow guards to see into adjacent yards. So it will make life tougher for ninjas trying to sneak through those yards or kill guards in those yards. There we've got start with an extra samurai. Start with a guard alerted. That's you can close one of the gates. So we've got this gate here. And this was open for our mission there. It started open, but you can close the gate like this. You put it down there and it's closed. And the closed gate just makes life more difficult for ninjas who want to affect guards on the other side of the gate in this yard. And ninjas who want to move through that yard, they can't trespass through the yard because the gate's closed. Yes, start with an extra barracks so you can spawn in more locations. These green cards here only come into play if you've got the actual Daimyo on the board. So this figure represents the Daimyo. And this comes out in the final mission when you're trying to kill him. Lord Yabu is his name. He's like the final boss of the Chapter 1. So every time the ninjas win a mission, they'll get special rewards that they'll be given that they can use. And every time the ninjas lose a mission and the Daimyo wins, the Daimyo gets special rewards and things like that. But when the ninjas complete a mission, they capture the location, and then the Daimyo stops getting wealth from that location, so the Daimyo will slowly start to have fewer and fewer toys to play with. But the missions are ranked in order of difficulty, so the ninjas probably want to start somewhere around the beginning and work their way up to the final mission and kill Lord Yabu, thus ending Chapter 1 of the story. So keep your eyes on the campaign to see if any more of those chapters are unlocked. And I already said my sign-off piece earlier, but if you do want to see how the game is played, please join us. We've got a full playthrough up on the channel. I hope you found this video instructive and informative. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and I'll do my absolute best to answer them. And thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye, everyone.